So welcome councillors, officers and members to the public meeting of the Relevant Committee. So I'd remind you to switch your phones to silent. There may be other members of public and press who attend virtually. Say if there's no one there, can I ask that those attending virtually switch off their microphones to avoid any disruption throughout the meeting? The meeting is being recorded and will be available in due course on the council's YouTube channel. To ensure those attending virtually get ahead of proceedings with the recording to capture the entire meeting, please ensure you project your voice and speak clearly. Please remember it's a formal meeting and therefore do not refer to councillors by their first names. Ensure that any questions are directed through the chair. Be kind and courteous to each other at all times, showing respect when another member is addressing the committee. Please be mindful that individual conversations not only detract from the primary conversation, but may also be picked up in the recording. And please be aware that contents displayed on your laptop or iPad may be seen by other members or members of the public attending meeting. We don't have any planned fire alarms tonight, so in the event of the fire alarm going off, please probably leave the building at the nearest exit. Kelly, apologies.
Thank you, Chair. I have apologies from councillors Bullard, Jones and Person, and councillor Bushell was hoping to attend virtually. He's not here at the moment, Chair.
So we need to approve the minutes for those that were here at the meeting on the 4th of June. Do I have a vote? Yep. All those in favour?
We abstain if we're absent from the meeting.
Any declarations of interest?
I've received none.
To agree the agenda between part A and part B, we don't have any part B, so we can go ahead with part A. So, item 6, which is an update on the pre-application for solar panels.
Okay. Evening members. You'll see this item was going to be taken by our service development manager. Unfortunately, she's unable to attend tonight, so I will hopefully cover it off and answer any questions that you have. We're also just going to share, I think, Kelly, you've got a PowerPoint slide. This item was to give an update on our pre-application process to do with solar panels. What we have there, I don't know if you can see that, you've got some screens behind you or to the side, but if you can't, I'll run you through it. It just gives a bit of a summary of the number of pre-applications we've had for solar panels in the last 12 months. 12 inquiries that have gone through the pre-planning process. So you can't see that? That's fine. I'm going to explain it and run it through for you. So don't worry. All you've got on there at the bottom is just a list of the areas that those applications have come through, but I will talk you through those. So don't worry about looking at the screen. We've had 12 inquiries that have come in the last 12 months. Slightly. The standard fee inquiry is £80. So we don't make a profit on the charge. It's really there just to cover the cost of the administration and the staff time in providing that pre-application advice. So in terms of income generated for us, 12 inquiries, £80, £960. One of the applicants in the last year, their fee was £256 because that included, in addition to pre-application for the solars, included an extension. So their fee included some pre-application advice on their extension as well. So it generated £960. In terms of where the applications came in to, they came in Lee and Ilfracombe. That was the removal of chimneys and adding some solar panels. In Umberley, that was a double garage with some storage above and roof and solar panels. In Barnstable, we had some solar panels fitted on a roof. Bratton Fleming, installation of 12 solar panels on a roof, plus some extra ones on the side of the house. In Ashford, solar panels on a dwelling roof. In Swimbridge, solar panels on a roof, battery and line render. Guineaford and Barnstable, again, solar panels on a roof. Milltown, Linton, Waddacombe, which is near Dulverton location. That must have been just on the border, I think, to North Devon. In Braunton, And then finally in Kew Martin, so 20 solar panels on that one in the bottom there. So quite various in terms of locations. 12 applications from June 25 to June 26, so not significant number. But in terms of the information, that's the volume we've had. In terms of the revenue stream, as I said, it's really there to cover the administrative costs. Officer time doesn't generate a profit for the council, but it does cover those other costs that we incur in providing that advice. We've compared across the county, and the other district areas are charging similar amounts for their pre-application advice as well. So the £80 isn't far adrift from what others are charging for their advice. Tracy is planning to review the schedule as a whole, and obviously do further benchmarking as well to see whether there are any changes required. But at this stage, there doesn't seem to be. In terms of how that fits in with other pre-application advice, we do have different charges for different types of pre-application advice. That's all set out on our website, so the charges do vary depending on the size of application that's potentially going to be coming in. And obviously the benefits of the pre-application advice is that it hopefully weeds out some of those initial inquiries to make their main application obviously a lot more fluent and effective and efficient when it does come through. But Chair, that's the information I think the members requested. Happy to take any questions if there are any. In terms of our wider planning applications, they are slightly down in terms of where we were this time last year. Obviously, there's a number of factors behind that. Obviously, higher borrowing costs, development costs, obviously having an impact. The slowing down of the housing market generally. Obviously, developers are delaying schemes as well in terms of build out as well. So there are obviously impacts through the economic conditions, which obviously are impacting on our overall number of applications. But we do occasionally receive large applications, and we have had notice that there is one coming in on Monday as well. So I can't give the detail behind that one at this moment, but obviously there is a larger application coming in on Monday. So happy to take any questions from members if there are any, Chair.
Great, I'll come to those in a few seconds, but just for the members that weren't here before, I think some of you were not on the committee at the time. So it was brought up with the idea of looking at if there was any way of reducing the cost, because we weren't sure on the cost at the time. £80 seems fair, relatively reasonable, to try and encourage more people to come forward with having solar. So that's why we wanted the feedback to know what the costs were, so we could look at if there was any changes that we felt were needed to that. So that's the background on it. So Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wondered what the criteria are for these applications. Is it because they're in a conservation area? Is it because they've got a particular type of property, or the size of the application, or is it generally a good thing for all solar installations? Hopefully we see quite a lot of solar going in, but there's only 12.
This is obviously only on those that have asked for that pre-application advice. So I mean, you don't have to have the pre-application advice. Obviously, you can just go straight for a main application, but there's no set criteria. It's really for those that are just wanting that advice up front. So I think the timeline of obviously when they put an application in, so they put an application in and then it's either invalid or there's missing information. That can obviously make the whole thing a lot more protracted. So I think the idea behind having the pre-application is to obviously try and iron out some of those questions at the outset. So when the main application then comes in, hopefully there's a more fluent process for the customer in terms of the main application going through.
Thank you. Because my understanding is not all solar needs a planning application. So is that right? Not all solar installations do, but I just wondered what makes people go down the route. It's not a criticism, it's just clarity of wanting a pre-application, whether it's particular types of.
I think it depends on the type of premises they're putting on. I think obviously if they've got older buildings, like I say, they may be in a conservation area, there may be other conditions that they might want to make sure that it's the right thing for the property in the area before they then obviously submit a full application, which obviously comes at a cost as well. So obviously I'm assuming these have all followed on to sort of main applications, but if something came up when they did this pre-application that might mean that the applicant decides not to then put in a full application and go down a different route. So I think every circumstance is different, but I suppose £80 just to get that initial advice, especially if you've got a challenging property or an older property, it just irons out those initial inquiries to make sure it's the right thing for the client before they then commit to the larger cost and time of putting a full application in.
Yeah, so I believe I'm in the protected landscapes area. So they can go for the solar panels without planning permission if you can't see it, if it faces the road or it's over a certain amount of wattage, you have to go through planning permission. So in our area, we've had solar panels put on roofs without planning permission because they don't need it because you can't see it because it's flat roofs. But then there are where they're going into a field, which then because of the protected landscapes, you would need planning permission. It's interesting on that. So I think on the planning meeting yesterday, with the pre-apps of planning, it was 9,000 applications. So there's quite a last year, which is quite different. But for me, £80 is nothing to pay because you're laying out probably, £3,000-4,000 minimum before, and larger is going to be more. So for £80 to find out whether you need planning permission or not is quite a small sum, really.
Yeah, Councillor Maddox reminded me really, yesterday when we were in planning, they're talking about the pre-apps, as you said, and there were exemptions for pre-apps generally, like farming communities and so on. Are there exemptions for just straightforward solar panel pre-apps?
So obviously the agriculture pre-apps, you've got quite a lot of representation from that sector previously. So whereas before obviously there were charges, then we decided not to charge for those. So that advice is given free of charge for the agriculture sector. And that hopefully meant that some of those questions that might then have been raised with likes of the Environment Agency, etc., are then ironed out early stage before then the main applications come in. Whereas before, if that wasn't happening, then it was coming in with an application and the consultation goes out, that would then making that application protracted, and that obviously is frustrating the agricultural sector. So we made a conscious decision because of that representation that those challenges could be ironed out through the pre-application process, which makes it better for the applicant, makes it quicker hopefully when the main application comes in, but also better for our staff as well because it means they can get on and determining the main applications when they're in. We haven't seen that same representation for the PVs and solar. As you see, we've only had 12 applications coming in. So that, I suppose, that ask about maybe looking to reduce the fee, as Councillor Maddox said, it's not a significant amount anyway. And the 12 that have come in obviously have gained that advice in advance of deciding then whether to actually go with the main application or not.
And pre-apps on farming is just for grants because it's time sensitive. So for example, if you get your go ahead for your grant in November, you only get up to the 31st of March. And if you're still working on it after the 31st of March and you've spent £50,000, you don't get a penny of it. So, and if you haven't got planning permission, you don't get a penny of it. So as an example, I built that wildlife tower and it wasn't approved until the August. I didn't get my planning until the December. So I only had January, February and March to build it. Luckily, it was wet weather. If we'd been doing it last winter, we wouldn't have had it in time. So that's why for the grant and to speed it up as well is good.
The earliest opportunity to engage with the officers is key because, as you say, that timeline is so tight that if you're then waiting to do, if you do a full application, there's validation issues or there's errors in there, that can take a long time then to obviously then have to come around again. So the key thing is certainly in that sector was to get the early engagement with the officers, and then hopefully it makes that timeline efficient in terms of then determining the application.
One thing, I don't know whether it's digressing a little bit, but with the BNG now, when you've got planning permission, then you have to do the BNG, and you've got another 6 weeks, I think, of consultation, and that's nearly tripped up a few grant systems because the farmers haven't really been aware of that. They think that when they've got their planning permission and they've sent in the ecology report, that's all done. So it would be beneficial, I think, and even with farmers that have been working with agents have been a little bit tripped up because I suppose B&G is still fairly new to them. It would be good to really have like a tick list for anything that's got a grant system, and maybe even with the solar panels as well, so that everyone knows exactly before they start anything or move forward, they've box ticked everything that they're doing. And with the council, it's always a cost. So, you know, for example, you know, if you're getting £25,000 in a grant to do something and you're having to pay £80 or £150 to find out whether you're doing it properly, it's a small amount to pay, really.
So, yeah, thank you for coming back on that for us. From what I'm hearing is that it's not something that we want to further pursue, and actually we're satisfied with what the costings are, and that we don't particularly feel that that is preventing people putting in applications. Is that the general feel?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Change and put your car parks up.
Okay, we move on to items.
I apologise for being late. We've just arrived in Germany. If that's how the room feels, then I'm completely happy that I read it wrong.
Okay. Okay, we can move on to item 7. Are you, so, yeah, you happy, council official, that we're moving on?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, we can move on to item 7, programme.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. You normally have Mrs. Wheeler here, but she's away, so you've got me, Nina Lake, instead this evening. So this report brings forward the quarterly update on the performance around the programmes and also the KPIs for that quarter. It gives you an update around the 5 programme areas which are being delivered to support the delivery of your corporate plan. And there's also a little section in here about the local outcomes framework, which is quite new to us, and it's the new reporting which will compare us nationally and also to a family group which are just being established. So I will go through the summary. What we've got first of all is the Housing and Community Safety Programme, which is the one that I lead up on, so giving you some updates on that. So note that there was a slight delay in this report coming forward, so I'll probably add a few more bits into the context, otherwise by the time this comes in the next quarter it will feel quite delayed. So local authority housing fund round 3, we've now purchased all the properties associated with that scheme, and we've entered into a memorandum of understanding for round 4, which will give us another 4 units of temporary accommodation. We have been working with North Devon Homes on a management agreement. As I'm sure you'll all remember, we are now a local authority registered provider of social housing, which is the first time we've stepped into that arena since 2000. And it does seem to be landing really well with our communities that we're stepping into that space. We hope to go live with our first set of properties, and I'll come on to that, but we're also in a live tender for Oxford Grove, our healthy home project, and we're expecting to go out to tender on the Royal Mail building later in July as well. So we're in a live tender position at the moment. We're also looking to purchase temporary accommodation at the old Laceworks. We're going to be purchasing 4 flats and 2 houses there, which is a great central Barnstable location. It works really, really well for us in terms of keeping those families within Barnstable, because many of them do appear to be and still access to schools and associated facilities around that. We're on site for our community land trust projects. These have been in the making for many, many years. We've actually got 77 social affordable rents coming forward, 16 of those in Ilfracombe, 21 at Woolacombe and 40 in South Molton. And I think that is a real success and a real long game. I think our teams have been working on this for probably about a decade to get these to come forward. But I would say that in terms of that model, North Devon are definitely front leaders in terms of those volumes now coming to the fore, which is a really nice success story. Renters' rights went live on the 1st of May. We've been checking out demand to see whether that's altered the position out in the community. We're making sure we're checking in with landlords and estate agents to sort of see whether landlords are selling up. There's a few, but not in the volumes that we were concerned about. So that risk isn't being realised at the moment, which is really good for our communities, because if landlords were selling, then we've potentially got more people coming forward who are then homeless and looking for temporary accommodation. So we feel that's quite steady at the moment. And finally, on the housing aspect, we've just drafted a homeless strategy, which will come back to this committee in November. Once we've been out to consultation, members will all be involved and able to provide some commentary on that, should you wish to do so. In relation to regeneration and economic growth, the local plan project is now live. The team would really encourage you all to take part in that consultation, get involved in the local plan where you can, because that is our strategic document planning moving forward. Future High Street Fund, Boutport Street, have now been handed over. So that's going to be our first tranche of social housing, and that's associated with this programme. The central car park works are taking place, and the flood defence embankment is now complete at Seven Brethren. Cultural Development Bridge Chambers Capital Project has reached practical completion. Port Marine Safety Code for Rolls Street and Castle Keys, the consultant has been appointed. And in terms of Oxford Groves car park, that car park is now reopened, and we've secured £103,000 towards the new silver gallery at the Museum of Barnstable. And North Devon, from the Department of Culture, Media and Sport, Walsall Museums and Galleries Fund. You can tell that's not my programme, because I can't talk about this with such passion as I did the housing, so forgive me stumbling over my words a little bit there. Customer focus, we've now got capital bids for 2 new cremators at the crematorium. They've come end of life, so it will just be now bringing a PAG bid forward for those and scheduling the works and understanding how that will come forward. In Appendix B, there's a list of all the process mapping that's ongoing. I don't tend to touch on that, but it does, that process mapping scheme tries to make us more clean. It's looking at those processes end to end, taking out elements where it's over-engineered or people are having to make decisions where they're not actually adding any value. We're really challenging ourselves and shining a light on those. And the Zoom agent is being tested, which is going to allow us to record telephone calls now, which is a benefit to the staff because it protects them, but it also protects the customers as well. So it should make those complaints coming through more visible and really easy to understand. And finally, on the customer focus, the Crisis and Resilience Fund went live from the 20th of April. And that's slightly different to the household fund because the parameters are slightly different, but it is live and those calls are coming through. Environmental enhancement, we've awarded a contract for a new air source heat pump at Brinsworthy, and we're currently scoring a bid for solar on Brinsworthy as well, learning from the works that we did on the crematorium. Our next phase of small fleet for works and recycling are going to be ready in October 2026, which will include 5 electric vehicles. Tetra Pak is now being collected with our cardboard, and the soft plastic trial took place in June. I haven't got full details on that, but I'm sure that will come through in the next reporting period. And finally, organisational development. We've delivered a change programme for our staff, very much linked into local government review and preparing our staff for that monumental change that's coming forward. The prevention of sexual harassment training has been rolled out, and that now concludes that project. We won the Large Apprentice Employer even of the Year for North Devon, which is a lovely accolade. Our apprentices within the organisation are adding really real value and they're staying on, so we're growing our own talent, which is lovely. And finally, the organisational development programme is really going to morph now into LGR, preparing for that change. Many of us are going to be pulled into that space in terms of those resources. So taking you back to the recommendation, it was that the actions be taken to ensure performance is at the desired level that you as a committee would hope to see. Happy to take any questions.
Yeah, I just add one thing, Chair. Thank you. So Nina touched on the soft plastics trial, and that will come back to this committee. So in your September meeting, it's planned that the trial finishes this week, I think it is. The soft plastic trial outcomes and the report from that will come to your meeting on the 3rd of September. So that's where you'll see the detailed outcome from that trial process.
Yeah, thank you, Nina, for that report. It seems that there seems to be quite a lot of positives in there. Obviously, it was really great with the winning the large apprentice awards and seeing that all over Facebook and stuff. That was really good. Members, questions? Lots of questions. Councillor Ratty.
Once again, amazing report, Nina. Always love having you at committees. On the local government housing provider, when it comes to LGR, is that going to be something we can roll over into a new authority, or are we going to have to start this whole process again in order to keep the developments that we're doing?
Are you talking about the LARP where we've become a registered
Yeah.
provider? So I think the only thing that will fundamentally change at the moment, we haven't got a HRA account because we haven't got 1,000 properties, thank goodness, because having 24 has been quite enough to get us to that governance piece. So I think the answer to that is depending on what the decision is for LGR, where those boundaries and geographies are pitched, will depend whether we are tipped into that arena. So if, for example, the Exeter and Plymouth proposal were to be, and we were left with the rest of Devon, then I think we would tip into that HRA arena. But I think in terms of moving forward in the next couple of years, Adam in particular has worked really, really hard to make sure that we've got the governance around this and we're going to be safe and legal moving forward. So not an immediate change, but as part of the implementation team, just a little bit of context, the LGR has been broken down into lots of themes, all of which SNT, the senior management team, are taking a lead role in. And so we're in that first phase of data gathering, understanding what the baseline is. So one of those will be what stock do we hold across that piece, and then the governance and the understanding of how that'll be managed moving forward. But I have to say that North Devon Homes, who are a strategic partner of ours, we've been working with them. They're going to do the initial management. They have been so supportive, and we've got a break clause in that contract. So they're very happy to support us up to vesting day. And then we will see what the new organisation has in hold for us, I suppose, moving forward. But I don't see any immediate concerns around it, and I think it's such a positive in terms of how it's being received, and I shall look forward to those properties going live on Devon Home Choice, because I think we're going to be absolutely inundated from multiple.
Councillor Norman.
Thank you. That's some observations. Mrs. Norman, we're very pleased the trial has come to an end, and looking forward to the results. She asked me today what's happening. We weren't in the trial area, but great to see that we're buying some properties in the Lace Factory. I think that's sort of, I'm assuming they're ready now.
We're in the process of purchasing
Yeah,
them.
so it's
When
not-
I viewed them, they weren't. But I think the completion is really, really close.
It's nice to have some that are live, almost live, so to get them.
Absolutely.
Just to confirm, we're exchanging this week
Oh,
with
nice.
a view that will complete hopefully next week.
That's good.
So that's the plans. And
Yeah.
have those units within our area as well.
What else? You mentioned the flood works down at St. Brethren's finished. I think the physical work, the cosmetic bit's not done
The
yet.
facing of it.
Yeah, that's the key bit for publication. I think it's sort of there's a little sample piece about meter there, but I think sort of lots of negative comments on thinking that it's going to be a Berlin Wall and graffiti. But I think as soon as that's up or going up, I think we can get some publicity on that.
Yeah, the facing definitely has to be done. I don't know what
Yeah.
you wanted to add on that.
So there's two aspects there. So obviously there were some comments raised on social media. We quickly got some press comms out
Yeah,
just to try and mitigate some of that, because obviously, yes, when you look at it, it looks a very tall wall, but the levels are being raised
Yeah.
as well on the other side. So the pathway that you'll walk upon will be higher than it is at the moment. So you won't be walking next to a very high wall. You'll actually be up at the the wall height.
Yeah.
So hopefully that's mitigated some of those queries that were coming through from members of the public. In terms of the finish, yes, that will obviously be the last piece that will go on, and obviously make that look a lot better than it does. Obviously, it's just a straightforward wall at the moment. Some of that is being funded from infrastructure funding that we've got that came through Section 106 funding, because the flood defence work that are there, they are obviously from the ag development on the other side, so the funding's come through from that. So some of that money that we're passporting to the developer, we're actually withholding until such time as the finished work has actually gone on. So there is some control there to make sure that finished work does actually go on to the new wall that's there.
Just about clarity on Sarah and all this. The post office in Ilfracombe, is it right the ground floor is going to be proposed, the museum is moving into there, or is that this proposal? Or?
There are conversations taking place around that.
Yeah, I still.
Yeah.
It's probably some public somewhere, I thought.
I think what I can add to that is that the design that's currently going out isn't going to be bespoke for the museum.
Right.
It's going to be quite generalised, just to
Yeah.
make sure it makes that space usable. There is an ambition, but until such time as contracts and monies have been secured, etc., and those memorandum of understanding. So yeah, that's the position.
There's one more, I thought it was. Yeah, how did you measure about there's not a large number of owners selling up properties? How did you gather that data?
So we've got a private rented sector team within
Right.
environmental health. Wendy Slate heads up that team. We've been doing several pieces of work around this. We have a check-in with our customer services team every week to see what that demand is. We're checking our housing options to see whether those calls are coming through. Mrs. Drew is trekking in with estate agents and landlords. We've had a landlord event down in Ilfracombe just to start to make some connections down there.
Yeah.
We attended a large landlord event which Mid Devon hosted, but landlords from our area were invited as well. And we are doing something through Engagement HQ to make sure that that conversation is ongoing. We were really concerned that on May the 1st, when it went live, that we were going to have a massive influx of landlords selling their properties. Now, that's not to say there aren't some, and there are.
Yeah.
And that's not to say there won't be more coming forward when they understand the enormity of Renters' Rights Act, because although we did a lot of publication and communication, I think until the implications of that hit, and we've got to have a more proactive enforcement regime that may stimulate more, but at the moment we haven't seen, fortunately, a spike. So that's what we're doing to try horizon scan around that area.
I think you'll find that small rental, the rates are going to go up, There's a real shortage, definitely responsible for rentals.
Yeah, I mean, we've been seeing that,
And the rates are going up.
the housing crisis, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And hence why we have stepped into that social landlord
Yeah.
space, and we are buying more temporary accommodation just to mitigate that and make sure that we have got decent homes for our people who are perhaps in need to go into decent homes.
Great report, thank you much indeed.
Yeah, can I just, well, a couple of things, back to the flood defence wall, we did a site visit with a planning committee on that. It's interesting when people are very surprised when you go through a massive planning application and all this information is there, and then when it's actually done and it's too late, people sort of start questioning it. But the other, on page 28, and you've got Georgium 19 units, is that the CLT?
Let me just get to page 28 there with me. Did you say Georgium?
Yes.
Yeah, the 19 units. Yeah, that's the CLT.
Yeah, they haven't actually started yet, I don't think.
No, the only three that I knew were live on site were the three that I referenced, which was Woolacombe, South Molton and Ilfracombe.
I just only because it says Georgium 19 units to be
Yeah.
delivered and works commenced on site in April 26.
Have taken action away to talk to our housing enabling team just to understand whether Jamie Jays unfortunately is out of business at the moment.
Yeah.
So I'll take an action away, Councillor Maddox, if that's okay.
Yeah.
And come back, and then in the minutes that we can give
They're
an
nearly
update.
there with everything.
Yeah,
It did nearly fall through because highways wouldn't adopt the road
yeah,
and the landowner wasn't going to accept from Middlemarsh, I think it is. They wanted ownership because they were spending, and there was great effort then from Matt Brown from planning, Ian Room, Frank Biederman, myself, and all of the CLT that actually had to circumnavigate and go higher up. And all they were asking for was about 20 meters of adoption, but actually highways now, because of Ian Room coming forward, they've adopted the whole system, which has allowed the whole project.
I've just
Go
gone and looked
forward.
back at my emails and I can't see anything immediately
Yeah.
where that I've been provided that update. So I'm not going to say any more on it. And
No, no.
it sounds like you know a lot more than I do in
Yeah.
relation to this.
I think it was from previous ones I've seen, it probably was anticipated to be on site in April,
Yeah.
and we probably, just not updated that. But we'll get an update in terms of when it's due to be on site, and then we'll.
Absolutely.
It's not far off now, so I would imagine we'd be looking at in 12 months' time, something like that.
Yeah, leave it with me and I'll make sure in the minutes that I've got an answer for you all so you understand the
Yeah.
position.
Or if you want all the information, can give you the name of the person that you can speak to.
Simon's in daily contact with Middlemarch, so we commission
Yeah.
them to help those come through. So I'm sure Simon will be more au fait than I
Yeah.
am. Thank you. It's a great question though. Thank you.
Thank you. Well done for getting Large Apprentice Employer of the Year. I noticed in the report. It's pretty good. I've got 3 questions. On page beginning 32, referring to the Healthy Homes project.
Yeah.
At the top of page 32, there's a reference to a funding gap. And I just wondered, is that a risk to the project?
No.
Is it a small funding gap?
No.
It's not qualified. Just,
I can give you
more
an
about
overview.
that.
Absolutely. So Sarah Jane Mackenzie's chaplain brought a report to S&R to vary the capital programme by 1.2 million. Yeah, 1.2 million pounds to bridge that gap. But the next proposal is that we secured Homes England funding. So we became a Homes England investment partner for the Boutport Street properties. And so we will now prepare a bid for those properties down in Ilfracombe, which hopefully will repay the money that we're borrowing.
Yeah.
But we needed to have that money in place so we could go out to tender. So as I said, the Oxford Grove tender is now in a live situation. We've had those back and we'll be going out for the post office this month also. Homes England have been extremely supportive. We don't believe that there will be a risk in terms of getting that funding because the properties do achieve all of what their fund and their grant looks to deliver, but it is that gap to bridge that. And like I say, there's been a slight delay in terms of this report coming through a month later. Otherwise that would have been updated and I should have looked at that more closely. So thank you for that question.
And does that include, because there's a couple of additional properties that might be being purchased, so is that part of that project?
Yes, it
Or is
is.
that going to require another additional amount?
No, so 37, I think, is included Oxford Grove, isn't it?
Yeah, so I suppose there's 2 things there. The report that Sarah Jane brought to S&R a couple of weeks ago was looking at the funding for 36 and 38 Oxford Grove and the Royal Mail building. That will come to full council in July for member approval, so that hasn't been finally rubber stamped, but that will go to full council. That covers number 36 and 38. In the middle of 36 and 38, you've got number 37, which the council have had an offer accepted on that building as well. So that then will bring the whole suite of those properties together. That will be funded at the moment through the capital programme through our temporary accommodation budget. If we choose to move that into social housing, then we've got the opportunity to flip that into that project as well. And we're also looking at another property in Oxford Grove as well. So the idea is to grow the number that we can do on social housing. As Nina said, the funding gap was obviously we asked members to approve borrowing. That borrowing will be covered from the social rent income we get through the Royal Mail building and the Oxford Grove properties. There was a slight gap of about 17,000 on the revenue budget, but we can fund that with existing resources to cover that off. So that's the worst case scenario. as Nina alluded to, if we get the Homes England grant, that improves that position, and hopefully then we don't need to borrow the money at all. And actually that money will then contribute back to the council, which we can then reinvest in the next social housing projects.
And I think it's worth noting that Ken and a few other officers have been working with the Ilfracombe Poverty Truth Commission around this, which if you're involved, aren't you?
A little bit, only
Yeah.
the edges, but I'm aware of it.
So they've been helping to inform the specification of those properties, their lived experience. We sort of gave them carte blanche to say what would good look like. And I was thinking, oh goodness me, that's going to be, but simple things like, can we not have storage heaters, please? Could we have a shower and a bath? So I was expecting gold taps and they were just so considered. So we've incorporated nearly everything that they've asked into that specification. So to take them on that journey with us has been really, really lovely. Or us be on their journey, I think it's probably the other way around.
Thank you. Second one, if I may. Page 40, Bridge Chambers. I just wondered, it seems such a shame that Beeford are not going to be part of that building, because it's obviously you've got the museum opposite and it would have formed a nice cultural block there in the town. And I just wondered, again, is that going to be, is it going to be easy to find a tenant to take the place of Beeford Arts? Is it quite, you know, I just wanted to know really how, if that's going to affect the business plan, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the business plan, it's the Bridge Trust that obviously run the buildings, obviously for them, it's their tenants.
Right.
So obviously they're now looking for a new tenant. Yeah, obviously it was disappointing to see them withdraw because it was all part of the bid when we put the funding in and part of the output. So we're working with the Cultural Development Fund who provided the fund, because obviously we still want the same outputs that we had when Beeford Arts were going to be present in there. So the aim was that we work closely with the Bridge Trust to try and get a new tenant in there, so that the cultural activity that was part of the funding bid and part of the funding outputs can still be delivered there. Otherwise, the risk is obviously, like you say, we have a vacant empty unit there and we're not delivering the cultural outputs that we said we would when we had the funding bid approved. So Sarah Jane and the team are working closely with the British Trust to try and engage with the sector to see if we can get tenants that are interested in that.
And there's nothing that can be done to tempt the Beeford Arts. It's not a financial decision that could, I don't know, just
It's
I don't represent them.
I mean, the British Trust are in conversation with them. It was their commercial decision. They chose to walk away, so which was disappointing, because obviously we worked closely with them and built the programme and the funding and the project around them. So yeah, those conversations will continue. So yeah, who knows? We hopefully might be able to turn a corner with them, but at the end of the day, it's their choice. They chose to walk away because they decided that they wouldn't be in there. So they have got a current premises at the moment, but that's only on a short-term net. So hopefully they will reconsider and realise the benefits of the fantastic work that's been invested in that building now. Obviously, yeah, we will continue to work with them.
Thank you. My last very quick one, the landmark heat pumps, page 57. I think it says, am I reading it right, that that's stalled? And I just wondered why, and hopefully have I read that correctly? Or it says it's been placed on hold.
So we had two funding bids approved through the same funding for air source heat pumps, one for here at Brinsworthy and one at Landmark. The one at Brinsworthy's proceeded. We've got that on site now and that's being implemented. The Landmark one was put on hold to do with the costs of the running of it, and also the type of air source heat pump that was going to go in there. So obviously we have an operator that runs theatres for us. So our contractors were working closely with them. The conversations just meant that project was just put on hold. So the funding is still there, but in terms of making the use of that funding, it would need to be delivered through 26-27. So capital funding's in place. The delivery of the scheme is just a little bit quicker with the Brinsworthy one compared to the Landmark one. But at the moment, that would be on hold whilst conversations between our surveyors and Landmark theatres can take place to see whether that one actually does come to fruition or not. Do with the operation of the air source heat pump and the configuration of that. It was a little bit more complicated at Landmark compared to the one at Brinsworthy, which was a bit more straightforward.
I was just wondering if there was any feedback you can give on Balport Street with the uptake of the commercial units there.
We will be bringing the reports members on Balfour Street occupancy, so that will be coming, which will obviously cover off all of Balfour Street, so that will cover obviously the housing and the commercial element. We held some open days, and there was quite a lot of interest from prospective tenants, so the team are just working through those business cases at the moment. So yeah, there were 10 units in total. Certainly there were initial offers, I think, going out to a small number of businesses for the first few units. As Nina alluded to, the opening of Balfour Street will be imminent once the car park is complete. I think practical completion of the car park was due this week. I think the car park should be finished hopefully tomorrow.
Should we write that down or not?
I was there today, Chair, and it looked pretty finished.
And the director of resources envisaged it being complete. Obviously, that's the date we're looking for practical completion. So that's the date that we're still working to. That will obviously then enable us to open up the third phase of the car park, the walkway through, and then obviously it enables us to get those tenants in. The team have been working hard with the people that have come forward, the businesses.
Yeah.
They've submitted business cases, one or two. Obviously had some questions after that again, but they're working hard to get those tenancies occupied.
Yeah, I thought you were going to go first, John. Councillor Can. On the subject of Balfour Street with the last phase of the car park opening, is there going to be permitted spaces for residents and businesses at the back of the building? Just because obviously in central Barnstable, parking is not very cheap or accessible. So I just wondered if if there was plans to put some permit spaces for the back of the building, so businesses and residents can use it, especially if residents were working at the hospital, for example, and needed their cars to go.
There's no plans to make concessions or do permits, just obviously we need to be fair to all businesses in Barnstable. So obviously the permit schemes we have in place for the car parks are open to anybody. So anybody who's working there or even living there can buy permits for the long stay car parks that we've got. But because this is a short stay car park, we obviously wouldn't be sort of penciling off some of the spaces for use of Balfour Street, because that car park's got to serve the centre of Barnstable. And if we do that, that reduces the number of spaces available for the wider town centre. And if we do it for those businesses, then the question will be asked by lots of other businesses in the town centre. So well, if you're doing it for those commercial operators, why can't you do it for our business? And then we'll end up having that challenge across all our short stay car parks and reducing the amount of space available, which is why we manage the car parks by having the permits for the long stay car parks. So anybody who is working there will have access to the same long stay permits that others have, such as our Hardaway Head car park, which is just along the road. And that one will be looking to possibly be surfaced shortly as well.
Can I ask a supplementary, please, Chair? Do we reckon that Hardaway Head has the capacity for these influx in potential permit applications?
Time applications you're talking about, obviously at the moment the car park is quite busy. We are looking to improve that car park and spend some further capital money on it. So we will look at the configuration of that car park. But Hardaway Head has got a lot more popular over the last couple of years, partly due to the works that have been taking place in the central car park. So I'm hoping with the central car park open, those that have maybe used Hardaway Head as a short stay car park will use the central car park, and that will open up Hardaway Head then maybe to have more permits availability.
Sounds like something for us to keep an eye on, and then maybe if we need to come back to it at some point, we won't know until then. Councillor Chan?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, a couple of things. Obviously, Councillor Ruddy just spoke about the car park, so I'm going to throw one in there. Have we made provision, and which is the car park that maybe the market traders have got allocated spaces for? Because obviously, you know, being in the centre of town, which have they got allocated spaces sort of in any of those car parks as traders for the panel market? Because obviously we're trying to, you know, accommodate certain traders, and I know that, you know, the market traders do find it difficult, I think, to have something close to the panel market. So I didn't know if they've got an allocated
Not that I'm aware of. I know the separate planning market working group have been looking at a number of options and number of the business plan coming forwards. Again, I suppose we've got to be consistent with sort of all businesses and traders and businesses alike, small businesses, because the same with Butchers Row tenants who are obviously not in the market, but obviously they are small independent traders as well. So it's that balance in terms of where we offer permits to. Obviously, we offer permits to our long stay car parks. At the moment, there's nothing in place for the traders, but obviously the planning market working group, have been considering various things that we can do to try and rejuvenate the market. I don't know if it's come up.
Yes, well, I believe that the new traders get a sort of welcome pack, and in that pack
Yeah.
it does set out the details about the permits. I'm not sure there's any specific
I
allocation.
know
but
it's
they do get the
very
information.
difficult for a trader to obviously unload their stock and disappear to a car park that's, a distance away. And I'm just wondering if all of those, which are closer to the market, whether they could, accommodate the market traders. But the other thing I was going to say, and I don't know if I've read it because I'm new to this committee, about the Butchers Row now. Am I right that some of those units, because Bakeport Street is now sort of almost finished, that a lot of those units now in Butchers Row are being taken up because people are obviously seeing a throughway from the central car park now into the town. And is that correct? Have I read it right? That a lot of those units are being
Very
sort of,
valid statement. I mean, the Butchers Row units have been full. We have had them full over the last few years. We had a couple of gaps, but I think where you're going is right, because obviously it does open up that walkway where people will now come through the central car park, through the new Balfour Street opening into that area. So right the way down through Butchers Row and with the pannier market. So those businesses and hopefully the pannier market will benefit from that footfall going that way rather than maybe going round the car parks like they were before. So it's great to see Butchers Row full. We spent a lot of money making sure it looks good in terms of decoration and the flowers that go with it as well. And I think that complements the market, and with the Balfour Street property open as well, a whole cultural quarter will hopefully be working together. So not individual businesses in isolation, but actually all together.
yeah, and I've seen sort of, different units open up with, along Butchers Row. So I think
One of the traders who was in the pannier market then has gone into Butchers Road, so one of the operators. So and that's hopefully the model that will be there, because if businesses want to start out, the pannier market offers a great opportunity to do that, and then if they grow, they've got the opportunity maybe at Butchers Row to grow further. We've obviously got the other commercial units, and obviously we've got Green Lane Shopping Centre as well to grow even further. So hopefully there's a stepping stone then for businesses to see a pathway to become a growing business.
and that was part of the market quarter, wasn't it? Original setup. So yeah, okay.
Councillor Dawson.
Yeah, most things have been covered now, but I will give you, no, don't be sorry. But I will give you a little anecdote really about the Renters Act, just a different perspective on it and a bit of praise for your staff. 2 weeks before the new act came in, my daughter and her partner were given a section, what do we call it, 2021, no fault eviction, because the landlady quite openly said, I can't face all these new rules and regulations coming in, and there's some kind of tax element of it, so I'm going to sell up. Given 2 months' notice, and they tried to find somewhere else. A lot of the estate agents were saying, as soon as they come in, they're out. Okay, they're just not even coming online. Or if we put them online, we have got so many people making bids for them. And so even though you said that you felt that there wasn't an increase of properties coming on the market, that wasn't what we found anyway. So it went on a while, and it was getting quite close, and we were getting really worried, thinking they might come back and live with us or something. So I said, look, there's no harm in going to the council. They both were employed, but low income really. So I help fill out the form for them, which at the time we thought this was just personal, not as a councillor. I thought they're not even going to be seen, but they rang them up. My daughter and a partner wanted to speak face to face with someone, so I said I would go in with them, and I went into the hub, and it was brilliant. Okay, and the person that saw us was incredible, very understanding, very helpful as far as like even finance was concerned and things you can do. Have you tried this? Have you tried that? And then I believe you're allocated someone who's going to be phoning them up, seeing how they're getting on, and all sorts of offers were coming in, not of accommodation because they didn't qualify for anything from the council, but they still said they would phone the landlady to see if they can get extra time, that if they really wanted a place and they felt they weren't getting anywhere and time was getting short, they would even phone the letting agent or estate agent and see if they could negotiate with them to put forward their case. But it was a week before they were due to, I hate the word, be evicted. It's terrible, isn't it? Really, it has all sorts of connotations. They found somewhere in Bideford. They've moved out of the area, but they've got somewhere. But it was really, really hard and really shocking.
Yeah.
And it was all because of the Renters Act. This particular landlady just, and she wasn't the only one. I've heard of lots of other anecdotes, people having to go and stay with parents or children, older people who have had to move out. So thank you.
Yeah, well,
It was excellent.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, your feedback is lovely, and we have got the government's shift is very much looking at prevention now. So we do a lot of what you've just described, trying to support people to stay there, doing those negotiations. And like I said earlier, we are seeing particularly the individual landlords, those with maybe one or two properties, but we haven't seen the spike that we dreaded that may come, because we thought if we have 100 landlords or 200, we are going to be in real trouble in terms of placing those into temporary accommodation. We struggle now, the numbers are creeping up slightly. We're around 74 households in TA at the moment. We topped out at 85 last year, which was the worst position that we've been in before. But I will pass that feedback on, because the team do work incredibly hard. And like I said, we've got 74 in. And those are new families that they've got to forge those relationships with, understand their situations. We've just employed a triage worker to try and make some of that easier as well. So somebody who's doing that, can we have that bank statement? Can you please provide us with that piece of evidence to free up the...
That is what they were asked. I think they were being triaged. I just sat there and said, I'm sitting here as just support, but I watched it all and it was really good.
That's lovely. Thank you very much indeed for that.
And I think that's a good reminder to everyone that we've got the hub there, and not only is it there for tenants and that they're in that situation, but also landlords as well that are worried about the act, and people can explain it to, because there's lots of landlords that don't understand it and have been feared, but actually from own experiences, good landlords are probably going to be absolutely fine. So
They will be.
yeah, it's a good reminder that both parties can come to that hub.
Yeah, and we've done quite a lot of work on our web pages as well. So if you're hearing any of that anecdote of people thinking that they're on the borderline of giving it up, please get them to check our web pages out, or you can direct them to me and I'll have a conversation. We're really trying to front load this and have those conversations to encourage people. And you're absolutely right. If you're a good landlord, you really haven't got anything to worry about. It's those who are not, who may have a little bit more.
And then hopefully we might come to a close on this one and go to the next one. Sorry.
It's just a very, very quick one. With the opening of the Balboard Street area there, what support are we putting forward to help out the smaller businesses along Bear Street? Because they're going to find a massive decline once that opens, and I've had quite a few concerns raised to me. So businesses like Barrow Clark, like Books, you know, like Archangel, there are multiple small businesses along there. And there is a lot of fear at the moment that as soon as it opens, there's no, you know, people are going to park up, go straight through there into town, and the small businesses along Bear Street are going to die off. What support have we got communication with them at the moment? And if so, what kind of support are we looking at? What kind of support can we offer them?
Sarah J. If you Hannah Harrington, our town centre manager, place manager, works closely with the place board in Barnstaple. So even though we'll be opening up obviously the additional walkway that comes through, quite right, it's important we support all the businesses. Obviously that will be a natural walkway for people to go through, but people obviously have other walkways and pathways they can go to as well. So the key thing will be around signposting and making sure that we inform anybody using the car park which routes that they've got available to them, so they can go through obviously the Droughport Street development. They obviously can go through the other walkways out round where into where the still 3 areas where people can walk to. So the important thing is making sure we've got signposting in place that enables people to be directed to all the avenues of the town centre. So that would be the key thing in place. So not just to signpost them to the NDC route, because obviously that's just one pathway into the town centre.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just going to ask about the Crisis and Resilience Fund, which you mentioned. I know that the household fund, which it's sort of replacing, was paused for a few months because I think, did you run out of funding or something? I can't remember exactly what it was.
So it ran for a 6-month period. Household fund 7 or 8, I can't remember which one it was now. It's one of the latest ones. But obviously, yes, that was paused because we got to the end, in theory, of where the funding was. So we were obviously inundated with applications.
Sure.
But yes, all of that funding was allocated. We actually put additional funding into the scheme as well.
Opened up again.
And that opened up again. So we opened it up for a short period. But as soon as that fund was then spent, obviously, yeah, we had to pay.
Is that what could happen to the Resilience Fund?
I'm going to let John come in because the fund is fundamentally different. Yeah, it is. And actually, quite a lot of people who have applied to the household fund have come forward for the resilience fund. So a bit of management around that in terms of exactly what the parameters are.
Okay.
I mean, I think we're using the money for several purposes. One of those is debt advice. There's something new going out to the rural areas. So those people who can't necessarily come into the CAB as an example, they will visit clients in their own home and they will see it right through to the end. So that's an additionality that's been put in place.
Is that true citizen advice? Or?
No, it's not actually. We've got not it's been commissioned through somebody else who we made an introduction through Encompass. And again, it spreads that model. So that's one of those changes.
Okay.
And that very much links back into our homeless prevention strategy in that trying to keep people and not get to the point of being homeless. So that's one element I do know about. John, I'm not sure whether you'd like to come in with anything else.
Yeah, so there's a number of different strands to the Crisis and Resilience Fund. So there are crisis payments for those that are in exceptional financial hardship, which obviously you can apply for. There are also housing payments. So previously we used to get discretionary housing payments that we make as a council. That's all wrapped up in the Crisis and Resilience Fund as well. There are also then the resilience services that Nina alluded to, and they're now set up and running. So customer service team with Deb and her team have been working closely with sort of other partners, and that's around debt reduction advice, financial capability and budgeting skills, accessing affordable credits, and the other one was around sort of income maximisation, sort of benefit checks, etc.
And also just one other thing to add, but I don't know all the details, but it's Sarah's project and we've just introduced a calculator, and I believe something like £19,000 worth of additional benefits have been identified for our customers, making sure that they're accessing everything that they should be. It's only been launched fairly recently, so forgive me not being totally au fait about it, but it's a calculator. We're going to bring an item to our senior management team to make sure that all of our services understand where this is and how their customers might be able to use it. Again, it's a prevention tool, making sure we're not getting to that situation where they've got debt, etc. So 19,000 in a couple of weeks has been really, really
That's good, yeah.
beneficial.
I
Yeah.
mean, I volunteer for citizens advice, so there's a lot of duplication in what you're doing, isn't there? I guess in what they're doing.
Well, the
or we're doing.
CAB are very much tapped into Sarah and Bev, so that I think the CAB, I'm not sure if they're still in the hub.
No, they're not. They used to be in our customer services team, so now they're not anymore at the hub. But Sarah and Bev do work very closely with them, so we grant aid to CAB as part of the budget. But they do work with the agencies rather than providing this separately. So where we can signpost to other agencies to help with this, we do so. They also signpost people to us as well.
Yes.
We've got a designated page on our website for the Crisis and Resilience Fund. So we can send a link of that out to you, because that might be useful for you as members to then signpost people to that as well. That sets out all the various different support that's available. It also shows the better off calculator that Nina talks about. And that's just a few simple steps where you can then see how much benefit you're eligible for, but also how much better off you might be in work as well. So it does that calculation for you as well. So it hopefully is an easy tool that people can use to sort of help them with their household budgeting.
Do the actual applicants apply themselves, or do we have to do it just by proxy? I mean, by citizens advice. They have to apply.
No, applicants can
directly.
Can apply. Often it is through some of the agency services they're with. So it might be that through somebody going to the CAB, they together then will fill out the application for fair crisis payment. But it's all set out on our website. So if we send the link out through Kelly to yourselves, then you can use that to signpost to people the various tools that are there to help people.
Thank you very much.
Any more questions? Thanks very much, Nina, for the report. Thank you very much. Moving on to financial management. Tony South, so you've got your calculator with you?
Never goes anywhere without it, Chair.
Good to know.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. I'm here to present the quarter 4 financial management report. The recommendations are detailed in your report in 2.1 on page 75. Firstly, I'd like to talk through our revenue budget position for the year. The revenue budget for 25-26 was approved full council in February 25 at just over £18 million. It's pleasing to report that the final outturn position was a net budget surplus of 1.991 million. The larger net variances making up the 1.92 million movement from the quarter 3 position are shown in Appendix A on pages 85 and 86. Larger and more significant variances are reported and expanded upon on page 76 in your report, and these are grouped by adverse and favourable variances. The most notable variance is a favourable variance of 1.885 million additional business rates income. This additional net income from business rates retention scheme has come from 3 main areas. So new growth on business rate income and additional gains through the Devon-wide pool, lower central levy paid on the additional business rates income, and a reduction on the element of appeals provision, resulting in excess provision now being returned. From the positive net outturn position of the 1.991 million, it's proposed to contribute the following amounts from earmarked reserves, provide protection against future budget risks, and enable the capital to proactively reduce medium-term financial pressure. So £700,000 contribution to the local government reorganisation reserve. This, together with the approved contribution for 26-27 budget, will bring the reserve balance up to £1 million, cover the North Devon share of the transitional costs in moving to the new authority. 250,000 to the Office Technology Reserve, cover the planned reserve contributions in 27-28 and 28-29 early for technology infrastructure requirements. 339,000 to the repairs fund. This is the general contribution to cover planned reserve contributions that were meant to be made in 27-28 and 28-29 early, for the asset maintenance and our requirements of our assets. 275,000 to the Townsend Management Reserve to provide funding towards future years street marshalling provision for those posts beyond the end of the current contract. 427,000 to the repairs fund to support 2 capital bids detailed later in the capital elements. Bids include cliff stabilisation and 174,000 and Barnsley bus station for corporate servicing of 253,000. This leads us nicely onto the earmark reserves. These are detailed in Appendix B. The movements in the reserves of 25-26, and members will see a number of proposed transfers within the reserves column. So that's following a review that we've made of these balances with the following rationale. So a number of dormant reserves and residue balances have been moved to the budget management reserve. 7 housing related reserves have been amalgamated for ease into 1 new housing reserve. And a one-off contribution to the Economic Development and Local Government Reserve made 1 year early to reduce the need for these contributions in the 27-28 financial year, helping to protect the budget moving forwards. Members' Technology Reserve balance has also been moved into the main Technology Reserve. Moving on to capital, the actual spend for 25-26 was just under 10.92 million. This resulted in a carry forward from 25-26 to 26-27 of just over 5.82 million. These details are in Appendix D. 4.4.8 of your report details other quarter 4 variations totaling 1.339 million, including the 4 capital projects alluded to earlier. These are scored high by the project team. The 5.82 million carry forward has been added to the existing 26-27 budget and varied by the 1.339 million detailed in 4.4.8 to give a revised 26-27 budget of 16.4 million. This takes the total capital programme budget for 26-27, 27-28 to just over 18.3 million. This programme is detailed in Appendix E. Funding this programme consists of £150,000 anticipated capital receipts, 9.59 million of potential borrowing, 6.985 million of external grants, and 1.581 million of earmark reserves. Total borrowing as at the 31st of March 26 stood at £17 million. Release of funds for this quarter can be seen in 4.4.13 of your report. And members, that concludes the presentation, and we're happy to take any questions.
I think I do have to start by making a bit of a political point about LGR position that we don't necessarily want to be in, and scarce funding that we already get, and now we're having to put away some of our money towards that. But yeah, so Councillor Ratty.
I'm sure that we'll get this report again at another committee at some point, but can I just ask, I was looking at the Pannier Market receipts and the Pannier Market events income, and obviously on the events income it says it's 80.96% of the budget. Does that mean that the Pannier Market is losing? This is on page 85, by the way. Does this mean that the Pannier Market's losing money on the events that it's currently putting on, or does this mean that that's part of the total budget for the Pannier Market?
Yeah, so it's part of the total budget for Pannier Market. So the event income budget was 46,000. It's not the events that we're putting on we're losing money, it's just the number of events weren't in line with the anticipated number. So when we set the budget, based on what we'd hoped to bring forwards, obviously the number of events wasn't obviously up to that number. So it's volume of events rather than the events losing money. So the events we made obviously did bring money in. We would just like to do more events so that we can try and get to the level of anticipated income that we'd originally set out. So we've got some work to do, which obviously is where the business plan coming forward will hopefully grow that number of events. The anticipated income eventually from events, we'd anticipated at 46,000. We obviously haven't achieved that in the early days. We obviously want to grow and obviously get to that point. But obviously, yeah, this is telling you that the income is £40,000 on that budget in last financial year. We hope that there'll be more events in there this year that will obviously then grow that to where we'd anticipated it eventually getting to.
If I could ask a supplementary question, Chair. On the total outlook of the Pannier Market budget, how much is the deficit on that? Because obviously, I think last year it was 100,000 deficit, and I was just hoping to know if we've improved or if it's gotten worse.
We haven't got the overall 25-26 deficit, but I can reduce that for you if you have that. The panning market will be running at a deficit, so the costs are higher than the income. That's not necessarily a bad thing, because obviously you've got to think about the wider benefit of what the pannier market's doing. It's bringing people into the town centre and then hopefully visit the pannier market and then hopefully visit other areas, and obviously it brings car park income in as well. But yes, the pannier market does still cost the council money, just like lots of other buildings.
Do we know if it's gotten worse or better, just from the top of your head, or?
Not from the top of my head, unless Tony, you've got the initial detail with you.
No, we've got just above the events income, you have got how much the penny market stall income is down by. So yeah, that was down by the 20, but there was a slight recovery from what we were forecasting at quarter three.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's been an improvement from what we were reporting at Q3, which was 34,000 down. And the market receipts ended up being £8,000 better than that. So a slight upturn in terms of what we were originally looking at when we brought this report to you last. But yes, overall, the pannier market would still be costing the council money. What we need to do now is look at how we can turn that around. It's not just cost us in the last year, it's cost us for a number of years. So even when the market was maybe more busier, 5-6 years ago, it was still costing the council money then. I think that's important context. Remember, it's not just been a recent last couple of years. For the last probably decade, it has cost the council money because the costs are more expensive than the income it's generating. But you need to see that as a wider economic generator for the town centre in terms of the council are paying for that in order to make sure that other things are benefiting in the town centre as well. We obviously want to make sure we can grow that income base, which is why we've made the investment in the market to put more events on. And that hopefully is a way of trying to reduce that gap from the costs and the income.
Thank you.
Maybe Councillor Carroll needs to declare interest. Free use of the.
Well, I mean, half an hour.
We won't go.
It's just a quick question. There's something on here that I don't actually recognise or don't understand. So under Appendix B, page 87, I was going through all of these. I recognise all of the different bits of the earmark reserves, except what's the parent scheme?
That's
What is that? Sorry.
Is an acronym. It's the Afghan Resettlement Scheme. So
Brilliant.
where we're getting grant funding to obviously place resettlement into housing. That's the money coming in, and obviously we're using the reserve then to pay for the cost. But yeah, apologies for that. Where we've got acronyms, we should make it a bit clearer in terms of what they're doing.
Because I was going to say with that one, looking at it, it seems quite healthy there with the reserves and everything where it's done the transfer over.
It does,
So,
yeah. But the
yeah.
grant money's come in, and obviously there's been money put into that reserve where we're getting government grant income. Obviously, we've got the costs still to go out because as we start to place settlements into properties, obviously we'll then have some associated costs to come out of that reserve.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry, I just wanted a bit of clarity. I didn't understand that.
Good questions.
Yes, Chair. Item 417, about the funding for the street marshal scheme. 275,000 was that was last year's, but there is a provision there. If I read it right, there is a provision there to continue with that funding for the street marshals.
Yeah, so the proposal in 4.17 is to put that money into a reserve.
Yeah.
You're right. The current service is covered up to December 26 already within the budget.
Yeah.
The 275 is on the assumption that members are happy to put that into the reserve from the year-end surplus. That plus the existing contributions we get from other partners. We currently get contributions from Barnsley Town Council and Ilfracombe Town Council. If those partners would continue their same contributions, the 275 from us with those contributions would enable us to continue that service for another 2 years. So that's subject to not only members approving to put the money in the reserve, it would also be subject to those other partners putting their contributions in, and also then subject to members approving to extend the service for another couple of years. So all we're asking for here is that principle of putting that money into the reserve we would then need to work out the costs and the contributions from the other bodies to see whether we can put that forwards for another 2 years for members to approve.
Thank you. I mean, you know, needless to say, the town, I think, has, you know, really worked well with the street marshal. It's been absolutely brilliant. But why I'm asking is on local news, we didn't seem to get a mention on the first report about paying for the street marshals, and I was very angry, sitting at the TV, thinking, come on, North Devon Council, because a certain person, I won't name, seemed to take the credit for funding the street marshals here in North Devon, and I wasn't impressed. So what I would say is, if we are putting money in, then we need to promote that and not let one person take the credit for funding the street marshals.
Yeah, I mean, just to be clear, Chair, the Office for Police and Crime Commission did put a small, put some money in.
Yes, yeah.
So yeah, I knew what you were alluding to.
Okay.
So the funding partners were obviously ourselves,
Mm.
Ilfracombe Town Council, Barnsley Town Council was local authority.
Something like that, though, John.
Not in terms of the article, no, I
No.
appreciate that. But there was some funding from the OPCC that went into it.
Mm.
Not at the level that obviously we put into it. We're probably the significant partner, I would say, in terms of funding. Obviously, we get a funding contribution from Ilfracombe Town Council and Barnsley Town Council, but ours is certainly the largest share of the cost. There was an amount from the Police and Crime Commission as well. So they did put some funding in, but obviously a contribution towards the total cost.
So can it be noted that if obviously this council is providing, you know, along with the other town councils, that is, you know, comes from comms that, you know,
Yeah,
we do promote.
We won't do the comms yet because you haven't made the decision to extend the contract at this stage. So I wouldn't want to preempt a future member decision. All you're looking to do at the moment is put the money aside. There'll be a separate report that will come to members probably around September time, setting out that obviously the current contract expires in December, and do members want to extend it for another year or 2 years? At that point, that report will set out it's going to cost X, and therefore in order to fund X, we'll need to make sure we put the funding in place. Obviously, you'll probably be seeing that North Devon Council will put a significant amount of funding into it. We'd hope that Ilfracombe, Barnsley Town Council, and hopefully the Police and Crime Commissioner will also contribute, but the report will clearly set out how much each party is putting in. At that point, that's probably the optimum time to say that members have made the decision to extend the service and how much each partner is putting into it. And obviously then you can be very clear about how much each partner is putting into it.
Thank you.
Or suggestion that we could have a little column saying these are street marshals, this is what they do, and we fund towards that. We could do something like that in the interim, just to say that, you know, promote that we've got them there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as members of FF&P, they are really, really valued. And
Oh, absolutely.
they do a fantastic job here and in here as well. And as the article on nuclear tonight, it has reduced and hopefully helped town centres improve and feel a safer place. So I think the optimum time to do it will be when members make that decision, because that will be the time then hopefully probably come September time when you'll be able to promote the fact that you're extending it for another couple of years. And obviously you're a significant funding partner and the value that the street marshal can bring. I think that's probably the right time for your comment exercise.
It's just, I'm great reports, great outputs. That's all recommendations. However, I sometimes had to consider crap on it. However, we've got a budget working group at the moment. I'm wondering the timeline to this. So this is a recommendation that these go to Strategy and Resources Committee. It would then, I'm just wondering sort of if someone at one committee needs a bit of caveat to say before it goes to full council that the final decision might change because we might need funds to reserve for other matches. You know. So yeah, we're almost saying here we're allocating these funds, but we don't know yet if we've got sufficient funds for next year.
So the what you're looking at here is obviously the financial position and at the end of March.
Yeah.
So March 26. Tony's alluded to what we're saying is of that money we want to put these money into these reserves.
Yeah.
those that are sat on the budget working group will know that the benefit of us doing that means that that would help the future year budgets. Now, obviously, those future year budgets aren't set yet. We won't set those until next February. But what the budget working group are doing are trying to reduce that budget gap. So this is really probably the first stage in that proposal, because obviously this is saying, well, okay, we've made a surplus last financial year due to these various reasons. You're looking to put some money into these reserves, and the reason you're putting those money into those reserves is to mitigate having to make contributions into those reserves into the future. So by making the contributions now from last year's outcome, you're saving the need to have to put money into those reserves next year in 27-28 and the following year 28-29. So by doing that and making these decisions and this going through this committee, strategy resources, and then full council, means that by the time the budget working group meets again in August, those monies are being placed into those reserves. So the budget working group can then firm up what next year's budget then starts to look like. So until those decisions have been made here, you can't have certainty that you can then make those budget reductions out of those reserves in future years. So by making these contributions now, you're helping the budget in 27-28.
Yeah.
But the timing wise is obviously going to this committee, you're endorsing the recommendations, hopefully they go to strategy and resources. Strategy and resources will then go on to full council. So by the end of July, those reserve contributions will hopefully have been rubber stamped and approved. Then when we meet in the budget working group in August, we'll be able to say, right, now our financial position looking ahead has been helped by those reserves having those balances. So therefore, we're confident that we don't need to make those contributions into those reserves in later years, and we can firm up what the future year budgets look like. So it actually helps the budget working group have that certainty when you meet again in August.
But the budget working group still has the option to cut services or move funds from A to B. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's not going to solve the budget gap.
No.
All this does is help it towards being reduced a bit, and then obviously there'll still be a budget gap to find. Obviously, members will then need to obviously come up with some options to say, well, okay, this has helped because putting the money in the reserve has helped to reduce that budget gap. By doing that means that we've got still some decisions to make about balancing next year's budget for 27-28. It's been helped and it's obviously hopefully in a better position than it was. And obviously we've got the responsibility to then make sure the 28-29 budget has got a balanced position going into the new unitary authority as well.
Yeah, this is Sarah. That's people, someone might do a press release to say money's been set aside for this project. And then 2 months down the line, something might be made to say, okay, I don't know, these reserves and street marshals. And
yeah, but the monies that are going into the office technology reserve and the repairs fund reserve, that's the ones that's saving the future year budget, because they're the ones that the current budget have contributions into. The money's going into the repairs fund, the funding some capital bids that are coming forwards. You're right, members have got a decision to make. They could put the money into the town centre reserve. They haven't made the decision to use that for the street marshals yet.
no.
All we're doing is giving them an option to say, if you value the street marshals and you want that service to continue, the current service runs out in December 26. So you've got a choice then. You can continue the much valued service, which I think is probably where members would want to be. If they choose they don't want to do that because they'd rather use that to fund the budget gap, that would only be a one-off funding because it's a reserve anyway. But obviously then you'd have a challenge in terms of how you then solve the not having street marshals. So it'll be it's member decisions to make, but it'll be something for the budget working group to have to grapple with as well, to try and come up with further options to bridge the budget gap in future. But these certainly help that budget position. We'll still need to do some work to bridge that budget gap again.
Yeah. To ensure some of our word in there with the budget working group, that will be to make recommendations, won't it, rather than making final decisions.
Yes, yeah. So just for clarity, the budget
Just
working
in case that
group
gets
is
picked up by press or anything.
it's an informal working
Yeah.
group, cross-party of members, and it's looking at the current budget position and options we've got to bring forwards, but no formal decisions are made. Any formal decisions would need to come through the various committees as part of the budget setting process.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question about property business rates. First of all, are they different to, I just see business rates as a block, so I just wanted to know what that was. And why it got £14,000, 14, whatever it is, 14,000 numerals as an outturn, sorry, at 43 and then 80,000 as an out. And yeah, it just to my interest as to what that was and what they actually refer to.
Is that on the,
Sorry.
on the appendix A?
Yes, page
Yeah.
85.
Yeah, so it's not different business rates, it is still normal business rates. The reason they're in there is it's under our property team, so it's the assets that we own. So it's properties and land that we own that we pay business rates on. So that could be car parks, it could be this buildings, all of the assets and buildings we own, we pay business rates on, like any other business. We've seen an increase in the business rates that we then have to pay. So when we set the budget for 25-26, we anticipated a certain level. Those business rates have increased. We thought we were going to be £14,000 over. We're actually £80,000 over at the end of the year. So there's an additional movement because those costs have come in higher. But it's exactly the same business rates as all other businesses pay. We don't get any different rates or anything like that. We just pay the same rates that all other businesses pay.
And that's because of the national adjustment to that national adjustment.
There have been national adjustments for the new year for 26-27, and there's been a revaluation exercise that's gone through. So that's obviously for the current new year, but these would have been under the 25-26 scheme, under the old scheme. So we've just seen an increase in the rates that we're paying, and that will be across all of our various assets that we've got. Some of that's linked to car parks because car park income goes up and some of the car parks get rated based on the income. So some of that business rates will be linked to some of that as well. But yeah, it's just a general increase across our sort of portfolio of property that we own. One further amendment, if that's okay. Yeah, thank you. The members, this is the report that will obviously go on to strategy and resources. The recommendations in your reports are to endorse those recommendations. Previously, the report would have gone to strategy and resources. They'd have heard it, and then it would have come here for you to endorse the recommendations. You're sort of doing it a bit in reverse now because it's coming here first, which is really good. Since the report was written for your agenda, we've got a couple of capital projects where we've seen one coming in lower and one coming in higher. They're both to do with retaining walls, but we need to make a slight adjustment to the capital programme. It doesn't increase the capital programme overall. We just need to move money from one project to another. It didn't come about in time for when your report was written. But if I can take you to your agenda papers, we'll just explain where the changes are. So in your appendix E, which starts on page 99, I can take you to page 100. And the second project up from the bottom is something called Remington Quay River Wall. That's got a budget of 422,000. At that point, we hadn't been out for tender for the retaining wall at Remington Quay. The tenders have now come back. They've been evaluated, and the costs have come in 215,000 higher than what we'd originally anticipated. Quite a significant increase. It's a retaining wall. It needs to be sorted. We can't not do it. It went through our capital bid process and obviously scored highly because it's an important asset to make sure it's maintained. If I can then take you to the page over Leith, the Adelaide Terrace retaining wall in Ilfracombe. That was anticipated and built into the capital programme at 550,000. That tender's come back and the work's actually been almost complete at a cost of 240,000. So we've got two projects where we've gone out for retaining walls. One we thought was going to be significantly higher than it actually has, and one the other way around. So what we're asking members is obviously overall the capital programme total isn't changing, but we're just asking that we move £215,000 from the Adelaide Terrace budget because we're about 300,000 underspent on that project, and moving that to the Remington Quay Riverwall project so that we can fulfil both projects and get those done. There'll still be a net saving on the capital programme because we've still got an overall saving on both projects once you add them both together. That wasn't in your report when we first brought it, but we're asking that we amend that report that then goes to strategy and resources so that that change can be picked up at the strategy and resources meeting and then go on to full council in 3 weeks' time for ratification. So then the officers can get on with the project and get that capital project ended and awarded.
Chair, remember, should I declare an interest as Vice Chair of Flemington Parish Council on that wall, because you're voting on it, no?
Because it's our asset, so you're making a decision.
Yeah.
So you're not actually formally making the decision. All you're doing
We're not
is
here on this one, we're just.
you're
that's-
endorsing the
that's fine,
recommendations.
Hear it, on the-
Yeah.
you know,
You're endorsing the recommendations that will go to strategy and resources. It will then go on to full council.
yeah,
Obviously, at that stage,
that I do,
you may
yeah.
want to declare. obviously,
Just
it's-
make it clear.
I don't have to declare my interest in street marshals, right? When it does come,
No.
I will.
It's just, it was a specific, obviously, it came in more. That's what you said, came in more than what. Yeah,
Remington's obviously come in more than the budget. Adelaide Terrace, Ilfracombe's come in significantly less. All we're asking to do is move that money from one project to another. It will go into the report that goes to strategy and resources. But I just wanted you to be aware that that's what we're proposing. Will go into that report. Doesn't change the overall capital programme. And it will obviously then come back to you at full council.
and that's when I need to declare, yeah, okay.
So Chair, that's the only change to the report. Obviously then it's referring the recommendations to endorse what we're taking as strategy. and resources.
So when we're endorsing, do we need to vote that we're endorsing to put it go forward?
Yes, please.
So have I got a proposer? All those in favour? Any against? No, that was the last anyway. Yeah, okay, brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you, members.
Adam, our annual treasury report.
Yep, thank you, Chair.
With no calculator.
I can always borrow Tony's.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, this is the Treasury Management Outturn Report, 25/76. Gives you the actual Treasury performance. I thought it might be helpful if I just took you through the table in the executive summary on page 104 of your agenda. For 25/26, we had unfinanced capital expenditure of 3.5 million. That relates largely to the future High Street project that we've heard the updates from within this meeting, and some improvements to Green Lanes. We also had additional finance leases, about 3,000, that's in relation to our vehicle fleet. We can, however, then take off a minimum revenue provision of 1.4 million. That is our annual cost of borrowing that we charge to revenue. That leaves us with a capital financing requirement, which is our underlying need to borrow for capital purposes, 36 million at the end of 25/26. Finance lease element within that has its own borrowing facility, so we can take that off. So our true borrowing need for treasury purposes was 30.5 million at the end of the financial. However, we only actually went out and borrowed 17 million because we internally borrowed 13.5 million. The cost down. We'll know that external borrowings did increase by 5 million during the financial year. In terms of that borrowing, we paid 543,000 in terms of interest at an average rate of 4.16% of those loans. That did compare to the budget for interest of 820,000. So slippages in with capital programme, our strategy of internally borrowing and delaying borrowing until we actually needed it did help to reduce costs. In terms of our investment performance, our internally managed funds earned 390,000 at an average interest rate of 3.86%. That compares to a budget for the year of 400,000. So we close on our investment income. Investments and deposits, not including the funds that we held with our own bank for liquidity purposes, that earned an average rate of 3.98% compared to the council's benchmark rate. That's it in terms of the update, Chair. As you know, on the recommendations, again, we're asking members to endorse the recommendation.
No, that's it.
Got a question regarding our debt portfolio. I was just wondering, obviously it said our total debt from the public works loan bank, that's gone up by £5,000 and the rate of return has also gone up. So is that obviously having a negative impact on our budget? because the rate of return has gone up and we're borrowing more.
Yeah, so that we've actually borrowed 5 million more.
Oh, that's
And, as you can see on the table on page sort of 113, 114, that sets out the interest rates that we're getting on that borrowing. Obviously, with the sort of economic conditions that we're experiencing, obviously some of those interest rates that we're able to borrow at have gone up. So some of the costs have gone up as well.
It seems quite high considering obviously we are a public body. It seems like we're almost at market rate. I don't know if you can comment on that at all.
In terms of the PWOB rates.
Yeah.
Obviously, how that works is it links to the UK government gilt market. So it's all driven by the sort of economics and the value of that gilt. And then central government treasury, which really is the PWLB, Public Works Loan Board. They add a margin on there. So it's 0.8% for that gilt market. So it's really those conditions that drive those rates. What we also do is we compare. So we have been able to go out this financial year and borrow from other local authorities. We've also been able to go out and borrow from pension funds. So haven't got to go with the Public Works Loan Board. At that time, that was the best option. When we bring this report back in a year's time, you'll see that actually we've got some different people that we borrow from a slightly better rate.
So we're shopping around a bit.
We are shopping around. Yes.
I think that's an economic term.
Yeah.
That's the principle.
Yeah.
As Adam said, Public Works Loan Board obviously is our normal go-to. We do get a 0.2% discount for a certainty rate, so we do get a slight reduction on others who go to Public Works Loan Board who don't get that. So that does give us a slight preferential rate. But if we can do it cheaper through other organisations, then we will do. So as Adam said, we borrowed from some other local authorities in this area as well if they've had surplus cash. And that also will be something we look at moving forward with local government organisation. Because once we know what the decision is and what the makeup of that new authority may look like, if we're having to go out and borrow, or another authority's looking to have to go out and borrow, and another authority's got surplus cash, there's an opportunity there to make sure that we can move money between authorities and do things that way to make it more cost effective for our cash management.
Yeah, so we won't be, if we're merging with another one, we won't be owing ourselves any money, will we, at the end of the day?
We'll still be our legal entities up to that new date, so we would still need to put some formal process in place. But there's an opportunity there to make sure that we manage cash effectively across the new authorities as well. But the aim is to try and get the best rate we can. Obviously, we're borrowing short term at the moment because that seems to be the more preferential rates. If you look at the rates, as Adam said on page 111, the rates do go up once you get past 12 months. So everything we're doing is short term, so that's the best way in terms of cash management.
Don't want to do too well, otherwise the government don't give you money, do they? If you do pretty well, they don't give you any uplift in money, so don't try too hard and you'll get a bit more money from it.
We won't try too hard.
Don't worry yourself, John.
Elections you have to next week, careful.
I just
might believe you.
Just got a bit of context on those rates. Again, this financial year, we have seen an increase of those rates. So as one example, last March, we managed to take up to 5%. If we were to go out today, it'd be 4.77% BWLB, 4.60%. So our borrowing costs are increasing in this current financial year because of those markets.
If I may ask a supplementary.
With LGR coming up, will there be a point where there'll be something instructed from government about lending and what you can't lend anymore, or do we know how that's going to work?
Yeah, not necessarily expecting that in terms of treasury management as such, because we will still have funds that we'll be able to go out and place. You're right, as we approach sort of vesting day, we're going to be careful that we're not going to be wanting to tie up our funds, that perhaps the wider unitary. So as John was just saying, we're going to have to coordinate our treasury management and perhaps, although it's separately, just make sure we're tying in and making those decisions as appropriate for the new unitary. I'm not sure that the government will necessarily step in that space.
I suppose there is a formal process that will come in, which is called a structural change order. So once the new unitary makeup is announced, there's a process to put legislation for that into Parliament. That's likely to take maybe 6 to 8 months to happen. So decision is made in the next couple of weeks. By Christmas, the government will hopefully put the structural change order in place to go through Parliament. That's likely to come in force maybe next February, March time. And that will set out some rules around, obviously, within the next 12 months to the new authority. If you want to spend over a certain amount or enter into big contracts, you will need to go through another loophole to make sure that the shadow authority, that new authority, is involved in that decision. So that will put some formal processes in place. And as I said, around the treasury management side, it won't go into that level of detail because we'll still need to manage our cash independently of that. What we are doing in advance of that, though, is we've got various themes that have been set up under the local government reorganisation implementation. One of those is a finance theme. So today, the Section 151 officers, we were all down at Totnes having conversations about this type of thing, so that when we get nearer to time of obviously going to a new authority, we're managing our cash effectively, so that we're making sure we're not taking on borrowing when we don't need to, because if there's surplus cash in the system from all the authorities, we can manage that hopefully effectively amongst ourselves. So we're starting those conversations now, even though we're sort of just under 2 years away from a new authority.
I'll come to Councillor Bishop then. So Councillor Bradley.
I was just interested in the software. Are you going to have problems with software in terms of standardising it across when the LGR comes in?
On software?
Yeah. Financial software, the specific.
So each council will obviously use different systems. Some will use the same system, but even if you use the same system, there'll be slightly different configurations.
Yeah.
So again, as part of those themes of looking at what we do before we get to local government, the new authority, one of those themes will be looking at all of our contracts, because obviously we'll all be contracted to various different software suppliers. We'll be looking to see when they are up for renewal. We won't have a new software system for day one of the new authority. I think we can be assured of that because that's a significant piece of work.
Yeah.
But over time, that transition would need to take place. So eventually, the new authority would be on one new set of systems, but that will take time once the new authority then becomes live. So the important thing for day one is that the new authority is safe, legal, and can operate. Over time, then some of that transformation will take place. So then eventually you would be on one finance system for the new authority. Initially, you'll probably still be operating your existing ones and bringing that information together.
That sounds exciting.
But there will be opportunities to try and align things. And if there may be councils that are on the same system at the moment, so there may be opportunities to align some of that in advance. So that's all part of these workstream themes leading into the local organisation.
Are Torridge on the same system?
No, they're on a different system. But there are others that are on the same system as us in Devon. So there's not many players out there in terms of the software providers. There's probably 4 or 5, but within Devon, probably there's 2 or 3 that people are on. So yeah, it would be nice if we were on the same one, but yeah, but eventually we'll get to that point.
Yeah, sure.
So Ratty, then Councillor Dawson.
If you want to go first, Councillor Dawson, because you have been waiting patiently for a while.
That's all right. Just a quick question and hoping for a bit of an explanation. Page 113, the first 3 public work that we have there. 1 million, 0.75, 0.75. So that's 3 totaling 2.5 million. I'm looking at the maturity dates on that, and if everything goes forward with the unitary, the council will not exist at the point that we're meant to have paid those off.
Yeah.
Are we going to be expected to pay them off sooner then?
No, I would see those transferring onto the new unitary, and as you'll see from some of those rates, I mean, we took on the really long-term borrowing. The rates were really good. I mean, we would jump at rates like that now and knock that away. So I imagine, I mean, you can get out PWLB loans, and at those rates, there might be actually receive money to do that. But obviously, if the new unitary needs that money, so again, If we needed to jump out of those, we probably could, but I would see that the new unitary would probably see if we could just move them.
Brilliant, thank you.
So on the subject, you said we're doing a lot of short-term borrowing at the moment, and we're waiting till we actually need the money. Are we jumping on better rates then and borrowing in advance potentially of needing to spend the money because the rates are better? And if so, and we're not spending that money, how are we managing that money afterwards?
Yeah, okay, so again, on that table one, at the moment, we're borrowing 30.5 million from our fund, so in a sense, the borrowing need is there, and we can go out and take on that cash. You're right, we are trying to keep short term. Because I know we keep saying this, but we are expecting the borrowing rates and interest rates and things to come down, and at that stage, you generally try to lock in and get the long-term rates. Where we have to be careful when we talk about sort of local authority borrowing. Most of the local authorities are in the same position when it comes to that Q4, sort of January, February, March time. In most authorities, that's when they're a little bit short of cash and there's less cash available, and then you see some of the borrowing rates go up. And then you've got no alternative really to go to the PWRB. So what we're trying to do, particularly this financial year, is try and take on some of that borrowing a little bit earlier where we've got the options and we can shop around a bit, and try and get some better rates at a better time. And also then if we go for 12 months, those rates will mature next summer when again we'll have more options to look around when hopefully the rates will be a little bit lower.
But if we're obviously getting these loans earlier in the year than when we might potentially need them, if we're forecasting an underspend, how are we dealing with the rest of that money? Because we've borrowed it, it's not really ours. So what are we doing with the excess cash?
Yes.
Just on a technical point, because we're not allowed to borrow in advance of handling, so we only borrow when we need it. But Adam said, obviously, we've taken on some rates at some lower rates. As Adam said, we did need to take that borrowing on, but we haven't borrowed any more than we need. We're not allowed to do that legally. But obviously, we're trying to take on short-term borrowing at the moment because that is cheaper. If we went longer than a year, then those rates are getting sort of over 5% then. So we're getting into sort of higher rates then. So it wouldn't be worth locking in those higher rates, because if rates do come down eventually, that's when we would start to then probably lock into those rates. But at the moment, we're using our own funds and internally borrowing against those. And that's a better way of managing our cash.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Okay, I think we need to endorse this one as well. So have I got a proposer? Councillor Rotty, seconder, Councillor Field. Those in favour?
You get some questions.
Yeah.
The final item we've got tonight is a work programme. Have we got the update? Did you do the update last time, or are we going to do an update this time?
I didn't a full update last time. Haven't really got an update because we haven't met since last time, except to say that we are meeting on 13th. Bring it all to a proposal.
Chair, I do have a minor update on the Panya Market Working Group. So I did go and see Hannah, because I was in town anyway, and I asked her just to bring up some points that what she's actioned, and she was happy to do that for me. She has now introduced the 15% discount on block bookings in 3 months in advance. She obviously said that we haven't had time to see how much that's really affected the trading still yet, but there is hope that obviously with getting the bookings in advance that traders will be more willing to stay on and not move on to other markets or other places because that's what we locked in. And then the 15% discount on additional days has also been increased. So this is like if you're trading on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and you were to do like a Wednesday, which is typically not a very busy day, they'd reduce the rates on that additional day if you're already doing a handful of days. And then obviously the new rate for on Thursdays for new traders at £5 to sort of get people into getting new traders into the market and seeing what perks and stuff. And obviously some more promotional materials gone out, which I can share with the committee, because obviously I only got this. But Hannah, she did it very nicely and quickly for us. And then, yeah, there's some other models which would not be for a Part A, but and there's obviously other options being explored around the venue hire in the evenings, on how we're modelling that pricing, which obviously hasn't been explored as much yet because we haven't been able to see what. I don't think we've had any events in the pannier market for a good while now. So yeah, so we're going to be looking into that in the next sort of meeting. But yeah, that's sort of like the interim update before we meet again.
Thank you. So we've got our work plan attached. Back. Yeah. if you wouldn't mind.
So then starting on page 117, it just sets out what's planned for the next meeting. So you would the 6th of August date, that's shown as a reserve date, and the reason that's shown as reserve, and it's the same strategy and resources, is obviously August is quite sometimes a challenging month for attendees and obviously people who go away on holiday. If there's not sufficient business or urgent business, and sometimes those meetings don't take place. The leader made the decision yesterday there's no strategy and resources in August. So the next meeting, strategy and resources, obviously is July, but the one following that will now be September. Because of a similar consideration, there was only a couple of items to come forwards. Those couple of items were the Q1 performance report and the financial management report. Obviously, you've just had the same reports for Q4. So the proposal now is those two reports will go to strategy and resources in September, because they will then normally follow on to September's full council, because there's no full council meeting in August. So we would propose that the two Q1 reports there for the performance report and the financial management report would move to your 3rd of September meeting. That obviously does leave you still with health engagement actions to consider. Again, so if you do still want a meeting and have that item, you can do, or members can choose similarly, like strategy and resources, to not have the reserve meeting in August and just go with your September meeting at that point. So that's members.
Think about that. Probably with the health stuff, that might be that we'd be able to circulate it anyway, wouldn't it, without being a formal meeting. So it doesn't look like there would potentially be anything else on there in August. Will we need to make a decision by? Does it need to be made by tonight, or?
Doesn't need to be made tonight.
But if strategy and resource have decided already.
Yeah.
Strategy and resources have already decided not to have their August meeting, but that's not to say you can't have a meeting, because you haven't got anything that's going to go on to their August meeting. I suppose for 6th of August, you'll be putting the agenda together probably the 3rd week of July.
So the agenda will be published on Tuesday, the 28th of July, if that meeting goes ahead.
You've got till then to consider and decide. You don't have to decide tonight. It was just pointing out that you've only then got that one item for consideration, and actually it's up to members as to whether you still want to have that item in that discussion, or whether you want to do similar strategy and resources and move that item on to September. September at the moment, you've got the proposed communication strategies coming forwards, the report on soft plastics trial, and again you'll have two performance reports going on there as well. Then,
so Councillor Wilson being the chair of it, how do you feel?
That was what I was going to say. So you partly answered my question: is how full is September? But obviously we don't want to be meeting for a single issue in August. Yeah. But on the other hand, it would be great if we're going to meet in September to really have this time to cover it, because we want to be able to hopefully get what we're proposing underway for the autumn term, so to speak. So as long as it doesn't make September too full.
September meeting you'll have the soft plastics response, the communication strategies. They don't have to come to September. They could go on to October, because you've got the preventing homelessness strategy. So you could have the two strategies coming together, separate items. But you could move the communication strategies to 1 month later. There's no urgency from memory of those coming. I know the team are working on those. They were working to September, but I'm sure they would welcome another month to bring those in October. So if you wanted to give yourself a little bit more time for the health engagement item, you'd have that first on the agenda as well in the September meeting if you wanted to give it its prominence, and then have the other items post that.
Councillor Rathke?
I was just going to say that if Strategy and Resources are on meeting, I don't think there's much point in the health engagement stuff coming forward because they won't be able to vote on it till September anyway. I assume they have to vote on it as well, don't they?
Not unless there's anything coming from this meeting to go to Strategy and Resources. So the health engagement actions are for this committee to consider. So I would envisage that would just stay contained within this committee. There's nothing to go on to FNR, so they're not linked. Only if something there was an output going to Strategy and Resources that they would need to have that recommendation. But
If I've changed my mind, I was going to say that we should just cancel it, but
Look, it sounds like a good idea to me, if members are thinking this, that we move the communication strategy and the homeless present strategy together. And then we would have the health soft plastics trial and our 2 quarter 1 reports in the September one, and not have the August one. Is everyone okay with that?
It makes sense with.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what this is as well as.
Yeah, okay, brilliant. And then, did you want to go a couple more months just to see?
obviously then you've got the following months will obviously sets out the programme performance reports and financial reports. I suppose just touching on Councillor Ruttie's point, we've got the working group for the pannier market that are obviously doing some work behind the scenes, and obviously have implemented some changes. You may at some point in the autumn like to receive a report from that working group in terms of the success of some of the things that they've implemented. So again, I'll leave that up to the working group to consider when they might want to report back, but you might want to have something maybe to your October or November meeting. The November meeting will have the Q2 performance information, so that will obviously have information on pannier market income and any variances to budget. So you may want to link the two together and have it at that meeting possibly.
yeah, I think we can get a report together of what, I think especially in the autumn, it will give us a good chance to see what summer has brought from pannier market with these changes. Obviously we're not really into summer yet, but when it starts kicking off, I think, yeah, getting an autumn report and something maybe actionable for before winter hits and the Christmas market comes, I think that'd be a good idea.
So just a reminder with our, I'm right in thinking with our forms that we made to bring items to the committee, that doesn't need to come to the committee, could it? People could submit them for the chair and vice chair to have put on a future meeting. So you don't need to wait for a meeting to say, actually, I want to put that on there. So if anything comes up in between stuff that's happened or other colleagues speak to you and you think, actually, I want to bring that forward, then please get those forms over to us so we can consider and maybe put these on some of the ones where we've got coming forward. Councillor Norman?
This is my clarity really. Do the chairs of governance, SNR and this committee still meet quarterly? To look at the workflow, just reassurances.
We were supposed to, but I did not attend the last one, Councillor Norman, so
Just
my
finding that the new
apologies.
chair is not attending meetings.
Oh my, well, you gave it up, Councillor Norman, but. Chair on chair,
I wasn't the guy, I didn't know.
Sorry, talking going on the pannier market update report, was that October, did you say, John? Sorry.
Yeah, I think the plan would be that we'd have a report. I think it would be probably the November meeting.
November, that's fine, sorry.
Tied with the Q2 report. It's before the Christmas period as well.
Yeah.
And then pannier market working group, I assume will meet between now and then.
We're aiming to meet once a month. Just because obviously like things are changing quite fast at the market. So yeah, and I think we're going to try and get a couple of site visits going where we're meeting on site. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff to still be worked through and considered. So we might not have a complete report by October, but there will definitely be a fair bit of work we've already done that we can report on.
Report from the pannier market working group from chair. Yeah.
Yeah.
In November.
November. Yeah, November. That's all right.
What do you think?
November the 5th.
November the 5th as well. Have a little display out there.
I don't think we should meet on November the 5th. I think we're just starting to bring ourselves some bad luck there.
I think
Just to note the work programme, please, yeah.
I thought we changed it. Sorry.
no, just to note that that's what we're doing for
You're
here.
accepting the
Oh,
work programme.
yeah.
You've made some changes, obviously,
Changes.
but you're just noting the work programme as it is.
Sorry.
It's just to add, I think when we first joined, we had quite a good sort of informal planning session, just throwing around ideas. And I know we've got our formal, the form that you can fill out. But I think sometimes if you talk about things and bounce ideas around well, it actually creates new proposals for things to talk about. So I didn't know, as we're quite light in a couple of the ones, December, January, whether that could potentially be, a bit more of an informal session on future work items, maybe things that have come up out of the forms that we could kick around. For example, I quite like the active travel suggestion that's on the later on in the list. So maybe to use some of that time to do some planning and bounce ideas.
If there's not any business in terms of formal business for December or January, you could turn one of those into an informal workshop and use that as a mechanism to put some ideas, look at the items we have covered, the things that maybe not been covered yet, get the flip charts out like we did before, and bring those forms in so we can still go through that same process of justifying the reason why there's an item on there, but use that as a bit of a sort of an informal workshop.
And that would seem good timing because we're obviously going to know a lot more about LGR then I'm sure there'll be certain things that we want to bring forward with that.
Seems good, yeah.
I think that's everything. Thank you, members. Thank you, officers.